lovelies. Today is sort of a different video, although I did post a mainly voiceover video for our 200 subscriber celebration. Go check that out, by the way. If you're not into story times, then this would be your time to bow out. I totally understand. But if you are in luck. Spring break was, I think, about a week ago. And I decided that since I have some money in my bank account that I worked really hard for, I wanted to go on a trip somewhere with my boyfriend. So I enlisted the help of a travel agent, and she started looking around at different things that we could do, different places we could go, and she sent me a listing on accident for a cabin in Texas. So we started looking at the cabin, and I thought it was beautiful, and it had a great view, and the price was cheap, and it had a hot tub. So needless to say, Texas was looking pretty great. We originally wanted to go somewhere closer to home so we wouldn't have to drive or fly, because I'm actually too young to rent a rental car, and I don't have the credit history for that anyway, if I was old enough. So if we did end up flying somewhere, we couldn't rent a car, which meant we would have to rely on public transportation, Uber, or just walking, which doesn't sound fun. But because of our travel agent's mistake in sending us this Texas cabin, we got stuck on the idea of Texas. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is so perfect, because I have friends in Texas that I haven't seen, and my boyfriend has family in Texas that he hasn't seen. So we decided that we would go on a trip for spring break to Dallas, Texas. Now, the first obstacle for this was making a budget, and if you've ever done a trip by yourself or you've helped someone with going on a trip, budgeting is hard. So I ended up making a loose budget of around $1,000. I didn't want to spend over $1,000, but if something happened on the road, since we were driving, we might have to pay to get towed, we might have to pay for damages, and we might have to pay to pop a tire on. Some sort of accident would have definitely put me over budget. But assuming there were no accidents involved, I wanted to spend under $1,000. This included paying for the hotel, paying for activities, paying for food, and the most difficult part, paying for gas. So if you drive right now, you know that gas prices are elevated. So in my area, gas is $4 at least. It's usually higher than that, so all of my gas stations around my area are usually about $4.10. But on the road from Florida to Texas, for the 10, 11, 12 hours we drove, most of the gas stations in Indiana and Alabama and Texas itself were $3.99, which was great because I would spend a lot less money on gas than I would if I was driving through Florida. So we ended up spending a lot of money on gas. It was to be expected though, because of the 10, 11, 12 hour drive there, and then the 10, 11, 12 hour drive back. I did spend a lot of money on that, but with my hotel, which cost a little under $600 for the couple nights that we stayed there, and all of the food that we bought, and the activities that we did, and the places that we went to see, I managed to stick to my budget of $1,000. I think I went a little bit over, but it wasn't so much over that I really cared about it. It was maybe like $25 that I went over. So the budget was successful. Our road trip consisted of driving through a little bit of Alabama to get to Mississippi. And then from Mississippi, we drove through almost the entirety of Louisiana. And then almost the entirety of Louisiana later, we had a pretty straight shot to Dallas, Texas, where our hotel was. Now, I say a 10, 11, 12 hour drive because depending on the time of day that you leave, it's gonna be very different. So if you're following along with me and planning your own trip to Dallas, please be aware that your trip is going to be significantly delayed the later in the day that you leave because of traffic. Fortunately for us, we didn't run into any traffic at all. And when I say that, I mean we ran into traffic once and it was a 3-minute delay. So I don't even count that. Of course, that meant that we left at 6 o'clock in the morning and we drove through very foggy road conditions for the first couple hours of our trip. But if you want to trade a couple hours of sleep and some foggy road conditions for getting to Dallas, Texas on time, I recommend that you wake up a little bit early to get through the traffic rush of people going to work everywhere. So here we are at 6 in the morning, starting our 10-hour minimum drive through 4 states in foggy road conditions, not knowing where the heck we are at all, and just following Google Maps. You would think that this would be a nightmare, especially since this was my first road trip that I did without a parent. But funnily enough, I had the time of my life on this incredibly long road trip. My boyfriend obviously kept me company, and we had plenty of music and road snacks to keep us occupied, but I did not think that I would last the entire 10-hour drive there without getting bored once. My boyfriend and I just drove and pointed out all of the different billboards and made up random car games by ourselves that we played for hours. And we stopped like twice to go to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, boom, there we were in Texas, driving over the freeway, looking at the beautiful city before us, and we hadn't died? It was insane! And once we actually got into Texas, and especially Dallas, all of the drivers were so well behaved and courteous, and I thought our Florida license plate would get us discriminated against because Floridians are known for being such horrible drivers. We didn't get honked at, we didn't miss an exit, we drove every street like we knew exactly where we were, and we got to the hotel, parked, checked in, went into their private parking garage, and arrived alive. We paid for 4 nights at the hotel that we stayed at, and this is sort of a mixed review of the hotel because there were some things I loved and some things I did not love. One of the things that I did like about this hotel is that the Wi-Fi was free and they had free breakfast. So that meant that I could do my schoolwork over spring break that was due the week after if I had some downtime at the hotel. And I had the ability to go downstairs, pack free breakfast, and bring it up to the room for us to eat. And I didn't have to go through all of the trouble of bringing breakfasts or budgeting for more food for us to eat for breakfast. Breakfast was pretty good at the hotel. I think that the options that they cycled through were not the best options, but depending on the kind of person that you are, I see why they would want to switch between the different options that they had so that everyone would have a chance to eat something for breakfast that they loved. My boyfriend really missed the presence of bacon. So the first breakfast that we had there, they had sausage. And I assured him, don't worry, I'm pretty sure that they will cycle through the proteins. So maybe tomorrow they'll have bacon or they might have ham or something else. And sure enough, the next day or the day after, they had bacon, and you bet I crammed a whole takeout container full of that stuff because I knew he would be super excited. However, they always had eggs and some sort of starch. If you've ever had hotel eggs, you know that you can taste the plastic bag or the carton that they come out of when you eat the eggs cooked. So eggs were a no-go for me. And the starches that they had were very questionable. They had bagels and toast and cereals that you could get every single day for breakfast, but they switched out between potatoes and French toast. And by French toast, I mean the kind of French toast sticks that you get in the cafeteria in high school for breakfast when you don't pay for breakfast. So it all comes down to whether or not you like soggy breakfast potatoes or cafeteria grade French toast. Everyone has their preference, but I elected to eat yogurt instead, and I don't blame anyone who wouldn't enjoy either of those options. Some bad things about this hotel. We personally booked this hotel not only for the price, but the amenities. This hotel had a pool and a hot tub that were open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., but the duration of our stay, the hot tub was out of order and the pool was only open once. And by the time that we had actually decided to go to the pool, they had closed it again. After walking around zoos and museums and around Dallas, you really want to have a warm bath or hop into a hot tub to loosen up your muscles, and they just didn't have the pool cleaned and they didn't have the hot tub cleaned, and neither were available to anyone staying at the hotel for the duration of our stay. This next part is the reason why I am not disclosing the location or name of this hotel. When we went to this hotel that shall not be named, we looked at the bed for bed bugs, but we did not inspect the sheets until that evening when we went to bed. And my boyfriend found blood splatters on the top comforter, on the sheets, on the fitted sheets, and we were very uncomfortable. He first thought that it was period blood, which I told him it wasn't, which didn't make the situation better at all because it meant that this was blood from someone actually bleeding. I gave this hotel the benefit of the doubt and assumed that maybe whoever made the bed had cut their finger while cleaning, or they had a hangnail that split off and their fingers just bled onto the comforter while they were changing the sheets. But I did not trust whoever made this bed and the blood that was on it to think that any of the sheets were clean. So I called, requested new sheets, and when the sheets came, I inspected them before I put them on my bed, and I smelled them to see if they were washed. Thankfully, I smelled the sheets and inspected the sheets and everything was fine, so we were able to remake our bed with the new sheets and go to sleep. But I just don't see how all of these specks of blood throughout the sheets and comforter went unnoticed by whoever changed the sheets or did not change the sheets. Thankfully, the staff was very accommodating and understanding of our concerns, but I'm not going to applaud this hotel staff for doing the bare minimum in this situation, because that sets a precedent for other hotels saying that it's okay to respond in a different manner. So this is a warning to those of you who want to travel. If you don't already pick your hotels carefully, please make sure to do your research and make sure that you are in an area and in a hotel that is going to treat you correctly and address issues like this in a professional manner. Now, on a lighter note, me and my boyfriend went to the Dallas Zoo. We also went to the Parks Mall at Arlington, which is outside of Dallas, and we went to the Perot Museum of Nature and Science. We went to the zoo on a day where it was the cheapest for 2 adults to go, and it was also pretty cold, so our experience wasn't the best, but I definitely enjoy just walking around, feeling the breeze, seeing all the animals, and just having a treat and going home. It was a little bit disappointing for my boyfriend though, because he wanted to see some very specific animals that were not out because of the weather. So if you end up going to the Dallas Zoo, be aware that you may not get to see all of the animals you would like to because of the weather conditions. Now, the Parks Mall at Arlington, holy freaking cow. If you are from a small town and you have never been to a mall in a big city, you are going to be so overwhelmed and incredibly excited. In my hometown, there is one mall, and that one mall is one story and it has 4 hallways. So you basically have a couple actually good stores, some stores that you don't go into because you're not a child, and then a couple of stores for adults or sports, which I'm not really interested in anyway. This freaking mall, it was 2 stories. I couldn't even count how many hallways it had. It had a freaking movie theater. It had a carousel. It had an ice skating rink. It had bowling and karaoke and an arcade. And there was an elevator in the center of the mall with glass walls so you could see the floors as you rode up and down the elevator. Me and my boyfriend walked around the entire mall multiple times, went up and down escalators, up and down the elevator, and we got pretzels, we got these juices from a stand, and we ended up doing almost every activity in the mall except going on the carousel and going to the movies. So we went ice skating, which was terrifying. We went to the arcade, which was ginormous. We did karaoke, which is something that I've wanted to do off of my bucket list. And we played bowling and had the time of our lives, because this mall, I have to reiterate, is like 14 times larger than the mall that we have in our hometown. The Perot Museum of Nature and Science was also pretty cool, but we ended up showing up around 11 o'clock, and we thought we could just buy tickets and waltz on in and get out and eat lunch. Unfortunately, when we arrived, we were faced with the reality that we would not be able to enter the museum with tickets until 2:30. Having to wait for hours and not being able to do anything was torture. Thankfully, when we finally got in, there was a lot to see and I took a lot of pictures and it was a really fun time. But there were so many people there and so many children that me and my boyfriend eventually got tired of the entire experience and felt like we had gotten our money's worth and it was just time to leave. We tried a couple of new restaurants while we were out and about in Texas. The first was not really that special. It was Raising Cane's, and it's basically a Texas version of Zaxby's, but they had dyed their lemonade for St. Patrick's Day to be green, so it was a cool experience nonetheless. But the second was In-N-Out. And I'm gonna spend some time talking about In-N-Out because my boyfriend is obsessed with it now, and he's so upset that he can't get In-N-Out where we live. So basically, we just decide to go through In-N-Out and try it, and I look in the bag once we get our bag, like you always do, to check to make sure your food is there. Even though the people at In-N-Out had already verified our order 3 times, I always check anyway. And there they are, the 2 little baskets of fries with the salt packets already placed on top of them neatly, a divider of napkins between the fries and the 2 burgers in their little wrappers in the little tiny cardboard baskets, file folder ingredients staring up at me like the most beautiful arrangement of flowers that I had ever seen. And I freaked out in that drive-thru. And it was a good freak out. My boyfriend was so excited by my reaction that he begged me to let him look inside the bag at the stoplight before the hotel. So he looked inside the bag and he was absolutely in awe. And once we got to the hotel and actually ate the burgers, we were so hungry and it was a great burger, and he was really upset that it was the best burger that he had ever tasted. So needless to say, I think we had a pretty good trip. It was full of lots of yummy food, cool activities, and people that we wanted to see, and the drive back was just as awesome as the drive there. Of course, we were really happy to get back to our houses, eat dinner, and go to bed in our own beds that night, but it was an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're young and you have the ability to travel, do it now, because you're gonna make some really awesome lifelong memories along the way. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story time. Let me know down in the comments if you want me to do more things like this and you can hear a lot more about my life. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!